Welcome back. As I mentioned, we have Ann Mundell Noel here on behalf of Amazing Hearing. Well, thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm wonderful, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And we were talking a little bit off camera about some exciting things that you will be talking about later. So can't wait to hear about that. But first and foremost, of course, we always want to talk about having your best hearing and what that, what does that involve? So what do you mean when you want to make sure that you're hearing the absolute best you can?
Yeah, so what we mean by that is we don't realize that there is a connection between our brain and our body, and our ears and our brain. So what happens with that is that we want to make sure we get the complete signal. If you're not getting a complete signal, you are doing some compensatory strategies that you might not be aware of, and it puts stress on your body. And so what we want to do is to inform people that when you are hearing your best, to the best of your ability, you're taking stress off your body and you're giving yourself the best chance for successful communication.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. And then I know that you've mentioned before about your brain and that, making it stronger is really important. However you do that, either, maybe reading or playing games or things like that. How does that correlate to better hearing?
So the way that that correlates is that we don't realize the connection between, like I said, the brain and the ear. So if you are not getting a complete signal in, you are doing the compensatory things that I talked about. You are having, the brain cannot remember what it doesn't hear, right? So if you don't get the full message in, you can't retain it. So if I were to say you and I are communicating and let's say we have a second to process the sound. If I broke that second down into 10 segments, the beginning part would be I'm presenting the message. The middle section, or maybe 4 milliseconds, would be the processing of your brain. 2 seconds would be how I'm going to react to it, and 2 seconds would be retention.
Wow.
So the process goes, you deliver it, I process it, I take it in and do something with it, and then I retain it. If you are having hearing loss, you are spending more time taking the message in and trying to figure out, did she say me or knee? Did you tell me to talk about the fishes or the dishes? Right? So if I'm taking more information on the front end, then I don't have as much time on the back end to react to it and to retain it. And so what happens is we forget things, and then we are confusing things because the brain is not getting its full message. So that's why we say the brain cannot remember what it doesn't hear. Is because it's not that we don't have the capacity, but we spent too much time with the processing on the front end. So the way that we get stronger with that is to be intentional about our communications. So things that we want to do is to improve the quality of our hearing, because there's other factors, not only memory, that are being affected when you have hearing loss.
Well, we talk a lot to people with that work with folks with Alzheimer's and dementia and things like that, and they talk a lot about how you can prepare your brain or play games and things like that that help you think a lot more, and so you're really using your brain. So those kinds of things are super effective?
They are. That is called hearing therapy, and we have different strategies as audiologists on how to do hearing therapy. There are games you can play, but the biggest part is, again, going back to that first part that we were talking about, is making sure you're strong in your hearing, that you are getting exactly what you need. Because the effects of hearing loss are great. Initially, understanding, right? We don't have communication. We misinterpret what's being said. People get frustrated when I'm talking about one thing, or you have to ask me to repeat. You give an incorrect answer. The communication itself gets broken down. But also our balance is affected when our hearing isn't as strong as it needs to be. Because our ears give us localization, and they help us with space and time. So balance comes from our eyes, our ears, and the bottom of our feet. And so if the hearing organism isn't strong, then the ear is not participating as well as it can be. So when we strengthen that, people go, oh, I feel more secure, I'm more settled in where I'm at. Right. We talked about the cognitive decline, the memory, right? Yeah. So the memory can't store it as well because it didn't get it in correctly in the beginning. And then isolation and depression, right? So I don't participate because I think I'm going to give the wrong answer. I don't want you to think I'm stupid, or I don't want you to think that I don't care. So if I isolate and pull back, then I won't give the wrong answer. And so that's another way that if you're not strong in your hearing, your overall health is declining. Right. And then finally, alertness, that we don't realize when we have hearing loss how much stress it puts on our neck and our back, because we're leaning forward, we're kind of here, we're trying to get the message, and we're actually using more mental energy to try to process the message, especially if we're in background noise. Right. So people coming out of these COVID times and getting more social are realizing, oh my gosh, I'm not hearing as well as I used to. And a big part of that is just like not exercising. Your body needs to take time. So I just want to encourage people to get stronger with their hearing. Right. Go back and start wearing those hearing aids that maybe they slipped on or didn't use as much, because that really will make a huge impact on your overall mental health, for sure.
Well, plus they were home and they didn't really go anywhere, so it's like, I don't need them, right? And then they may not have used them for a couple of years, and they may not have had them checked in a couple of years.
Right, so that's why we want to encourage anybody who's wearing hearing aids. We have the ability to actually objectively measure to see if the hearing aid is working to the best of its ability. Okay. So even if you haven't been a patient with us, and even if you bought them somewhere else, you are welcome to come in, and for a nominal fee, we can run your hearing aid and make sure it's operating optimally. It's an objective test. It's not just, hey, how does that sound to you?
Right, okay, good. Yeah. And then people are starting to come back together in the clubhouses, and there are facilities here that do looping. So tell me a little bit about what that means.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to say that while during the COVID time that the performing arts got looped. And what that means is that there is actually a program in your hearing aid. And not all hearing aids have this, but there is a program that if you go into the T coil, for telecoil, and somebody is talking to a microphone in a room that's looped with that T coil, meaning that there is actually a wire around the room that is hooked into the microphone. So when I talk into that microphone, if you're sitting in the audience and you have your hearing aid in the T coil program, what I'm saying from this microphone directly goes into your hearing aid. So it doesn't matter if you're sitting in the first row or the 50th row, it's going to sound the same. So the people up front don't have an advantage. So the big part is by going into the Performing Arts Center, when somebody's on stage and they're performing, you're going to hear the punchline. You're going to hear what's being said because it's coming right into the hearing aid. But again, you have to have that program on your hearing aid, and you have to be in that. Okay. So we have that actually in our office. Okay. So we have a loop that's hooked up to one of our TV sets, and you can walk in, put your hearing aid on that T, and you would hear the TV, even though it's muted. So nobody else in our office is hearing it, but if you put it on the T, you would hear the input because that TV is hooked up to a loop.
Oh, that's great. And thank goodness that the Performing Arts Center got that. I mean, that's where we have all of our, obviously, performances that more than 500 people can go to, so that's just great.
And I do want to commend, Tony Berrient and the Mission Viejo Hearing Loss Association. It's changed its name now. It used to be the Hearing Well Club, but she is such a huge advocate, and so I would encourage people to not only support the Mission Viejo Hearing Loss Association group here in Laguna Woods, but to be an advocate for your hearing. If you have a clubhouse that you're participating in and you can't hear, ask to get it looped. Contact Tony, because she is trying to really make a difference.
Now, there's one thing that many musicians actually experience, as well as other people, is called tinnitus. And how does that affect the hearing?
So tinnitus or tinnitus, both pronunciations are correct, is actually a ringing in your ears. And what happens with that is that it's a warning sign from the brain. So the brain is looking for a complete signal, if you will. And if you have hearing loss, it's only getting a partial signal. It's not getting the complete signal. So what happens is there's extra energy in the brain. And I tell people it's like a stubborn 2-year-old. It's going to get attention one way or another. So if I give a 2-year-old a toy, it's gone. If I give the brain a full signal, 85% of the time, the tinnitus goes away. But if it doesn't, there are programs that we can put in a hearing aid to actually help. So when a doctor says, no, there's no help for tinnitus, that's accurate, that there's no medical condition, nothing treatment-wise that we can change it or get rid of it, but there are ways to treat the symptoms. And we do that through hearing aids, and we do that through tinnitus pillows. There's a pillow you can get, because when you're quiet and you're not around a lot of sound, that's when the emotional energy in our brain kicks in, and that center contributes towards the ringing.
Well, that sure is interesting, and I'm sure people can come to you to assist with that. So that's awesome. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you have been on a trip and you went to Uganda. Tell me what you did there.
Yeah, it was so exciting. It was my 3rd time being there. The last time was in 2019. But what we did is we did a medical mission. So we walked alongside the doctors. So there was 6 Ugandan doctors, and they saw 3,200 people in 3 days with $7,000 worth of medicine. Then we also taught women how to use little hand sewing machines, and they were able to make menstrual pads, and teaching them how to make washable pads, because there, if the women are menstruating, and the girls can't go to school because of that. So they don't have the resources that we have here. So it was teaching them how to sew, and then finally we taught them how to make soap. So we made soap, and again, over an open fire pit, they just did it right there. We did the wooden stick, and showing them how to make the soap so they could sell it and use it. So it was an amazing trip, and we're very excited. And we do have some Ugandan items in the office for those people who are like looking for maybe a special purse or necklace or something.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, the way that you actually get to go to Uganda and bring your services there, and as you call it, hope, is you collect bottles, and they're the plastic bottles. So tell me what someone can do there.
Sure, so everybody wants to make a difference in the world, so what we do is we collect the plastic bottles and the aluminum cans that have the California CRV label. So we don't take milk cartons, we don't take laundry things that can be recycled, only things with the California CRV. But anybody could bring them in, just drop them off at our office. We're located in the Trader Joe Shopping Center, and you just drop them off. And all of those together have made a difference, because we have a trailer and we collect them and fill the trailer, and we use that money also for water wells in Uganda.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming in. Nice to see you, and good work.
Thank you. Appreciate being here, and look forward to seeing you again.
You're welcome. All right, if you want more information, you can always get in touch with Amazing Hearing at 949-667-9818. We'll be right back.